Elsie Jensen here. Today we are going to make some sourdough waffles, a sausage and pepper frittata, and some hash browns. So let's start by prepping up the bases for our sausage, our frittata, and our hash browns. Then we'll whip up our batter for our waffles. So I'm gonna have some country sausage here, about a pound of it. Actually, I don't even think I need that. We're going to start cooking this up, break it up into chunks because we'll divide this out in our little, we're going to bake up our frittata on like a mini loaf pan instead of doing it in like one big skillet. It just comes out already served, like serving sizes. So it works well that way. And it doesn't need to bake as long, which means the eggs kind of stay nice and juicy. So I've got our pound of country sausage here. I'm going to turn my skillet over medium high, and we'll let that start to kind of cook up. So for the veggies in our frittata and in our things, we're going to kind of do a little Christmas theme. So I've got a red bell pepper, some green onions, and then of course a regular, little bit of a regular onion that we're going to use up with. So let's get these. We're going to dice up our onion nice and small for our frittata so that we're not having really big chunks of veggies in it, but more little bits that flavor it throughout. And we'll give them all a good saute up in kind of that sausage grease to give it all great flavor. And then we're also going to dice up our pepper, our red pepper, nice and small as well. And then we'll use some cheddar cheese as a cheese base for it, but you can really use whatever cheese you want. So let's kind of de-beard and take out our base of our sweet pepper here, our red bell pepper, not spicy. And then I'm gonna dice this up pretty small too, again, so you'll just see cute little red specks throughout, get a little bit of that pepper flavor, but not like overwhelming in the texture. There. And we'll kind of dice this up nice. And then we'll whip up our sourdough waffle base. I've got my waffle iron preheating so it's nice and hot to cook them up. It's a Belgian waffle iron, so we'll get those really big waffles with those kind of deep craters to hold all of that good syrup. And I think I'll dice up a couple cloves of garlic as well for the frittata. And then when you're cutting your bell pepper, if you cut it from the inside versus the outside in, you're going to have a nice cleaner cut, and because there's a lot of good texture on that inside that helps your knife grip fairly well. So we'll get these nice and diced up, nice and small. So again, you'll have these lovely red specks throughout both the frittata and our hash browns. And we're also going to throw in some green onions. So trim off the bottoms, and then we're going to kind of dice these all up. We're going to keep our spices really simple today for both hash browns, frittatas, onion powder, garlic, salt, and a little bit of pepper. Get these nice and diced. And we're going to head over to our sausage here. I'm going to kind of break it all up. And kind of make it to where we don't have super huge chunks of sausage. But again, this is just a nice country sausage, or almost, essentially a breakfast sausage. Mix that. Here we go. I do have my oven preheated to 400 degrees. That's what we're going to bake our frittata at when it goes in there. Okay, spread that out. We'll let that saute here. And let's get our garlic minced up on there. And then we'll start kind of working on our batter. We're going to use just a couple cloves of garlic here on there. Going to mince it up, add some nice fresh flavor to the frittata. So running out of room on my cutting board. There we go. Get it nice and smaller chunks versus large. You could always just use, like a teaspoon and a half of garlic if you wanted as well for it to get it there. And perfect. Okay. Let's get a little bit of our batter going for our waffles, which is a pretty simple batter to make, but so delicious. And it's a great way to use if you have a lot of sourdough discard that you need to get rid of, like if you keep really big jars of starter, this is a great recipe. I doubled it so that I can make a good amount of waffles today. But because these are Belgian waffles, otherwise the recipe only makes like 4 Belgian waffles, and I wanted a little bit more. Okay, so what we're going to start with today for our waffles, we are going to use 2 cups of our discard. So I said it uses it, and this is a double recipe. So my regular recipe card, which I do believe I have this recipe card out for our members, for them, is just 1 cup. So this is double the recipe, but 2 cups of our discard, 2 cups of milk, I'm going to crack in 4 eggs. They're really delicate eggshells. Wash my hands real quick. And then I'm going to pop each yolk. That way they'll mix in a little bit easier. And we're just going to kind of mix that egg and the milk and the discard together. Once that's all kind of mixed up and combined, we will add in our melted butter. We're going to add in a whole stick of melted butter. And that's what gives the waffles their nice crispy ridges, which my oldest daughter always tells me. I always am like, waffles, pancakes are like the same thing. And she is like, does not like pancakes unless they're Swedish pancakes. But she loves waffles and always wants waffles. You used to always think, oh, waffles are more work, but it's really pancakes are more work because you have to kind of sit over a stove while once you get your waffles in the waffle maker, that does all the work. Okay. I think we've got that egg fairly mixed in. Just going to kind of smash up any bits. Okay. Our sausage is pretty much almost cooked through. So we're going to start adding in our onions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of push our sausage out to the edge of the pan. I'm going to drop my onions right in the middle in the well in here. We're going to let them just cook for a few minutes in that well. And just do your yellow onion first. Don't add the green onions in. Those are going to be the last ones. But we're going to just let it kind of cook up right there for just a second. Let's add in our stick of melted butter.
You have a question? What kind of sausage?
That's country sausage. So pretty much the same thing as a breakfast sausage. Not too, pretty mild in flavor, but delicious. Okay, we're going to add in 1 stick of melted butter, the same as a half a cup. And then I decided, normally my recipe doesn't call for vanilla, but I'm going to just add a little bit of vanilla. Give some just a little bit sweeter without adding too much like extra sweetness to it. So we're going to do about a half a teaspoon of vanilla just to get that nice kind of pop of flavor in there. I always add vanilla in my pancakes, but not often in my waffles. But today I feel like a vanilla waffle. Okay, we're going to add in our baking powder and our baking soda and a little bit of salt. So we are going to use 2 teaspoons of baking powder. So 1, 2, and then 1 teaspoon of baking soda. And a half a teaspoon of salt. Now, if you use unsalted butter, you're going to want to use a little bit more because this does kind of cut down, makes the flavors really pop. So let's give this a good mix. And then I'm going to get my spatula here. We're going to mix up our onions. Beautiful. I'm going to add in my garlic and part of my onions, or not my onions, part of my red peppers. We're going to save some red peppers for the potatoes as well. So I'm going to add in those. We're going to let those have a nice little saute up first. And then start mixing it all around. And then lastly, we'll add in our green onions at the very end, but you just don't want to overcook your green onions or they start to lose their form. Okay. So get all of that baking powder and baking soda mixed in here. So what's going to really allow these waffles to puff up is both the 4 eggs in here and that baking powder and baking soda. It's going to make them a really they're not going to be a dense waffle, but a light and fluffy waffle with that crunchy shell to it, a little crunch or crisp to it, I should say. My daughter loves her waffles very, very crispy. Yeah. Just making sure there's no clumps. Okay. And now we're going to add in just about 2 tablespoons of sugar, just a little bit of sweetness because, again, you're going to be coating them with nice and delicious syrup or fruit compote or whatever you want on them. So that's what adds the sweetness to it. The main base of your waffles is pretty mild. Okay, got that mixed in there.
For someone that missed the recipe, how can they find it?
So I do have this recipe card available for our members, but for everybody else, we do upload our videos to the link on our page, so you can always rewatch and then recreate them from just watching them again. So you get to cook along with me. Okay, we're going to add in 2 cups of all-purpose flour. And again, we already have 2 cups of discard in here as well. And we're just going to mix this up. You don't want to over mix it because over mixing it will give you a stiffer and less fluffy waffle. And we want nice, fluffy, delicious waffles. And that's because we've got a butter base in here, which is going to give it great flavor. But it's going to be a thicker batter, and we want it to be lumpier and chunkier. Our sausage is just about there. I'm going to turn this down.
For those that don't know, can you explain what discard is?
Discard is when you have a sourdough starter, which is what you use to leaven your sourdough bread, and you have to feed it in order for it to be active to make your bread and kind of rise. And when you feed it, you get rid of some of some of the starters so that you're not making huge amounts because you kind of need to feed it with equal parts flour, water, and starter. And so discard is just what you get rid of it, but you don't have to throw it away. You can use it in lots of delicious recipes. Okay, I'm going to turn my burner off here because it looks like all of that has a nice pop of flavor. I'm going to add a little toss of my green onions in here because, again, I'm going to save some for our hash browns. We'll do a quick toss. And since my waffle dough is ready, I'm going to bring this right over here and we'll be ready to cook that up. Let's get our frittata finished up so we can have that start baking in the oven. So I have, let me clear this out. I have 8 eggs, and I like to do 8 eggs because I have 8 mini loaves, and I find that it is a perfect combination between the veggies, the sausage, and the eggs to have just the right amount. This, the perfect combination, but you can always add more if you want to. Okay, so let's get our eggs popping. So we're gonna crack our 8 eggs. You're gonna give them a nice whisk or whip up. Then we will throw in our sauteed veggies. Now I'm doing it in a mini loaf pan. You can always do this in like a skillet or an oven ready pan and just bake it in one big pan. I like to do it in the mini loaves because it bakes a little bit faster and it just makes serving up my family easier instead of having to slice everything up. Everyone can just grab a little mini loaf. And the mini loaves are also great for if you want to make a big batch and save for later. These save well both in the refrigerator and in the freezer. So they're a good breakfast thing to prep ahead. Okay, let's get a little whisk here. Pop each yolk. It just makes it easier when you're going to mix them up to combine them. And then we're going to add in a little bit of cream and shredded cheese, which will grate in here, and onion powder and garlic salt. Okay. So our eggs are pretty good. Let's grab our spices over here and a little bit of black pepper. Grab that as well. And my cheeses. Got everything over here. I'll bring it all right back over there. Okay, let's do our black pepper since I have it in my hands. We're going to do about a half a teaspoon of black pepper. And we're going to do a good amount of onion powder, about a tablespoon. And we have garlic salt. We're going to do about a teaspoon of garlic salt. The sausage is going to give a good amount of saltiness to the eggs as well as the cheese. So you don't want to put too much in there, even though, yes, there are 8 eggs in here. You don't want to put too much in here. And then we're going to do about a 1/4 cup of heavy cream. This is going to make your frittata fluffier than if you were to use just base eggs. You can also do milk if you want, but I feel like the cream just gives it a richer base towards it. So we're going to whisk this together. Here. Perfect. And then I've got my cheddar cheese. And we're just going to grate some of this into our things, and then I'll grate some over the top of it as well. But we'll just start. And you need about a cup max. You don't need a whole lot. You can go less on it. You don't want to put too much cheese in there, or you're not going to have the right ratio of egg and cheese, because cheese is going to make it denser and it's going to weigh it down and can make you a little bit more gooey. So don't go too heavy on it. I put about, I want to say maybe a half a cup in there, and then I'll grate and have a little bit over the top of each one. Okay. Let's pop our sauteed veggies and sausage in here. Just scrape it all in there. Even some of that residual drippings, because those will flavor this up so well. And then I'm just going to grab a spatula spoon to mix it up. And you can see we've got just a really good ratio. Beautiful. And now we're going to put it in our mini loaf pan. Let me grab my oil spray. That way we can spray it down and it'll help it pop out nice and easy. If you're going to do it in like a nonstick skillet, just make sure it's a well-greased skillet. Will make it a little bit, again, easier to do it there. I'm going to go through. We're going to start with a spoonful in each one. I like to grab a big chunks of sausage to go around. That way everyone gets those chunks of sausage. And you don't have them all loaded up, and then we'll even everything out at the end. I always say, if you have those bowls with the spouts, those are great for this because it makes it a little bit easier for pouring. My mom has those at her house, and I'm always like, oh, I should get those. But I realize that I have too many sets of bowls. I've got metal bowls, plastic bowls, ceramic bowls, glass bowls, and I don't know. Apparently, I really like to collect bowls. So again, we're going to go back over, and you want to just make sure each one is filled up as evenly as possible so that they bake up roughly the same time. And these are going to get bigger in size because that egg will puff up in here as well. That's why I say if you were to double the egg ratio, it just would almost be too much. Here. And then we'll sprinkle a little bit of cheese over the top of each one. Get a little bit more. Try to even these guys out. Looking good.
How would you store these?
So if you're going to keep them in the fridge, just an airtight container. If you do it in the freezer, I like to kind of wrap each one in parchment paper and then kind of put it in a Ziploc baggie, airtight baggie. That way they just kind of stay a little bit fresher. That parchment paper kind of protects it a little bit better from freezer burn in there as well. And then I always say, like, the best way is always let them defrost and then heat them back up, in the microwave. But you can always do them straight from frozen to the microwave. It just sometimes ends up with you get like rubbery ends on it if you do it that way, because the outside always gets a little bit hotter before the insides do. So I'm just going to grate it over, and then I'll make sure everything gets pushed in. But just a little bit of cheese over the top of each one. You don't need a whole lot. I will say this is something where a little bit goes a long way on here. There we go. And then we're going to go pop these in the oven at 400. And since they're in the mini loaves, these are only going to take about 12 or so minutes, to bake up. If you do it in the bigger, like a big cast iron pan, it's probably going to take closer to 15 to 20 minutes. So we'll pop those in here. I'm going to set my timer. I'll do 12 and a half minutes, and that should be good. I'll know when they're ready is when they've kind of puffed up and are firm to touch. You don't want to jiggle. Okay, let's get our first batch of waffles going. We'll get our hash browns frying up here in just a second. So I've got my waffle iron nice and hot. Now we have a good amount of butter in here, so you don't need to grease down anything, but I'm just going to grab a measuring cup. It's a little bit easier for me to scoop it in here than if I try to do it with my spatula. Trick with a waffle maker. Do not overfill your waffle maker because it will get double up in size. So I kind of fill it like this much. And then once I close it, it will fill up to the sides. If you overfill it, that's when you're going to get the burst out. Mine has a timer on it. I do 3 minutes. And that's
Kirsten likes her Christmas decor.
Oh, thank you.
Decorating it?
We are getting our Christmas tree today. We normally get it so much earlier than this, but it has been a very crazy start to the year for us. So once we'll get that up, we'll have it decorated, and then we're going to do a little walkthrough of all of our kind of decorations for it. So that is our last little bit for it, but we're almost there. I know we are normally, let me get this.
Maybe you get a real person.
I do get a real tree. I am a person who it is a real tree all the way. Yes, they are a big mess, but you just can't beat a real tree. Always had one growing up, and so real. I think one year when my husband and I were first together, we had a plastic tree, and that was the only time we ever had one because it just wasn't because we weren't really celebrating it at our small little apartment. But real tree all the way. Love the smell. The cats love the real tree. So it's just nice. Okay, we're gonna put in a nice thin layer of olive oil in here because we're gonna be frying them. It doesn't need to submerge. We kind of make our little potato hash browns nice and small so they'll cook up in here. Let's start by, I'm gonna get my veggies in here. We're doing nice red and green to add fun color.
Where'd you get the double-sided waffle maker?
So this waffle maker, it may not look like a relic or an ancient thing of the past, but it's like 20 years old. It was from Williams and Sonoma, and it's from the KitchenAid Professional line. Unfortunately, they have discontinued it. But I think KitchenAid has made one that is a newer one, but it's not quite like this. This was actually my parents', but since I do all their cooking, it's just been relocated to our house. And if my mom ever asks for the waffle maker, I'll bring it over. But I've had it at my house for about 8 years now, and she has not asked for it once. So she can enjoy the waffles at our house. It's a great waffle maker. I call it my hotel waffle maker because it is very much like the ones at the hotels, you know, when you stay and you get your little free breakfast and they've got the little Dixie cups full of batter. Yeah. It makes great waffles. Okay. And you can adjust it. It has a nice little timer, so you can adjust it for how long you want to cook it. You know, longer for a crispier one, but I find it works well. I'm doing about 3 to 3.5 minutes. Okay, let's get our hash brown base mixed up, but let's first check out and see how it's cooking. Look at that gorgeous first one. So let me reset this. Beautiful, nice, crispy. I'm going to grab a plate so that we can put these guys down on. Let me grab a fork. It is best to take them out with a fork because it lifts it up really nicely once you get it underneath there. So just a little on each side. There we go. But again, look at our beautiful waffle, nice and crispy. We'll put in our next batter. And you see how like I don't fill it up all the way to the edges because it will puff up too much because again, you have those eggs and that baking soda. And when you flip it over like this, it really allows it all to spread out. I'm going to start it. There we go. We've got our next one. Nice and ready. I remember the first couple of times I made waffles, I filled it up and they exploded out the sides. It was hilarious. It was just a big waffle mess. So now I err on having, you know, some with a little bit of a jagged edge versus a huge mess to clean up. Okay. And we'll slide this guy in here and we'll flip him over. Okay, I've got one potato down. We'll see how many. Let's do this big one. I might just do 2. I always forget when you grate your potatoes, they make a lot more shredded potatoes than you think. And you can always buy the pre-grated ones, but it's really not hard to grate them up yourself. Especially, you know, I feel like potatoes are one of those fairly cheap vegetables that are very versatile that you can use in a lot of different things. And this is just one of those great ways. And you don't even have to peel off the skins because, do 3. The skins, you get just such a small amount on each piece that my kids don't even notice them. Now, the one thing is if you grate your potatoes. You've got to be ready to use them fast because look, just in the difference, they start to turn purple fairly fast. That doesn't mean they're bad. It just means the natural sugars in the potatoes are starting to oxidize, just like with an apple and a banana. So you don't want to, you can't, this is not something that you can do too much prep ahead because they will turn colors and you don't want to put them in like a milk or water because that will make them too soggy. Okay, we're going to throw them in here with our green onions and our red peppers. Mix them up. Adds little pops of color. Get that going. And then you can always add an egg to it to help be your binder, but I have found that you don't need it. They'll hold together as you fry and crisp up, so they don't really need any extra binding to it. And the eggs make them a little bit fluffy if you do. We're going to add in a little bit of garlic salt, about a teaspoon, about a half a teaspoon of black pepper, because you want good flavor on these guys. And then we're going to do about a tablespoon of onion powder. This onion powder is going to be like your binder in here, and it's going to give them a really great savory flavor. Before we mix them up. Let's see, perfect, nice golden brown. Again, just fluff it up. If you try to pull too much, you're going to kind of separate them because again, these are very light and fluffy waffles, but they have that nice crispy edge to them. Now, the best way if you make a bunch of waffles to reheat them is to reheat them in your oven. That way they crisp up, or if you've got a fat enough toaster, you can pop them in the toaster. The problem is these Belgian waffles are pretty fat, so they don't always fit. Although that's on my I want to get a new toaster. I want to get this, I saw this Smeg one that I want, and it has a really fat opening, which is perfect for sourdough bread too. Gently. Beautiful. Look at our mountain of sourdough waffles. Let me push start. There we go. And we'll get this batter in here. Scoop this up. Now, if you want to add a little bit of fun, you could put in some Christmas sprinkles or food coloring, and you could change these colors up. Add them fun. A lot of times at Christmas, I will do either green and red waffles or green and red pancakes for the kids because, got to have it nice and low for it.
Yeah, question. What setting is the waffle iron at?
The waffle iron is, it's just one setting. You can't turn it up any higher or longer. So you preheat it and it's in the nice hot setting. And then you just cook it for a time. And I'm doing it for about 3 minutes on there. Okay, we're going to mix up our, I'm blanking on the words. Red peppers. There we go. Green onions, onion powder, garlic, salt, and pepper with our shredded potatoes here.
Yeah, question. Are you making latkes?
Yeah, that's essentially what they are. I just call them like potato pancakes or potato hash browns. So they're just nice and delicious, kind of potato variation here. Now, when you do this, you want to squeeze out the extra liquid from it. And I just find, and this is going to help you hold your your potato pancakes together. And we'll throw them in our oil that we have nice and warm. A little steam is coming out of our waffle maker right now. It's blowing. That's how you know you're getting a crispy waffle. If your waffle maker doesn't have a timer on it, so my old waffle maker did not have a timer on it, the way you knew that it was ready is when you stopped seeing the steam come out. That meant that it was cooked all the way through, all the liquid had evaporated, and you had a nice crisp waffle.
Is there a recipe for these waffles anywhere?
Yes, so I have this waffle recipe posted for our members, so they can just go dig through the posts and find it. It's our sourdough waffle maker, and I did a double batch. But for everybody else, we do upload our videos to the link on our page, so you can always recreate these recipes just by going to our page and searching for the waffles. I've made waffles on stream a couple of times. Today's variation that I just did, I tweaked a little bit, was I added about a half a teaspoon of vanilla to it to give them just a nice kind of sweet flavor to it. There we go. Now, when you're frying up potatoes, you don't want to make them too thick, but when you see that they're not just on the edges, the outer edges, but when you've got a nice golden ring forming around, that's when you're ready to flip them. Don't cook them on too high of heat or you're going to burn and crisp them before you get that middle potato cooked. So make sure you do it. I heat my oil up high, but then I cook over about a medium. I have it on about a 4 or 5 right now. I'll get this next batch of waffles out. Here we go. And again, just take your fork, lift a little bit first around each one because I don't spray my waffle maker down. I just use then butter in the batter for the nonstick. You can always spray your waffle maker, which will make the release come just a little bit, but I find it makes it too crispy of a waffle. We're going to get these out, and then we're going to go grab our frittatas out of the oven because they're just about ready. So let's flip this over. And then I'm going to start it, and we'll get this guy out. Let's see. See, this is why I said I put probably a smidge too much in there, and that's why it's kind of over a little bit. So we'll get our last, I think this will be our last waffle going in. But we've got this nice, huge mountain of delicious sourdough waffles. And then we're going to go grab those frittatas. I think I'll be ready to flip.
You've gotten this question quite a bit. Can you explain it's 2 waffles? People see you put the batter in and then flip it and it's done.
Yes. So it is not, this is a double-sided waffle iron. So it makes 2 giant Belgian waffles at one time, which is actually really nice for, because then you can constantly go for it.
So it takes a few minutes, not a couple
Yes,
minutes.
it's 3 minutes per waffle. Yeah, if they created something like that, that would revolutionize the waffle world. But that would be a little insane. But no, it is a double-sided one. Oh, look at these, beautiful. Now, just to make sure they're done, give them a little tap. And as long as your finger doesn't get a big jiggle, you're good. Beautiful. So we're done with our oven. Cancel that off. So these were in there at 400 degrees for about 13 minutes. We'll let them sit here. Again, I like them in the mini loaves. Cooks a little faster without drying out the edges as much as when you do it in the big pan. And it gives you like perfect little serving sizes. And if you like to do a lot of meal prep, these ones actually they prep up fairly well. Like you can keep them in the fridge and just mic them in the microwave for like 30 seconds to a minute, or you can keep them in the freezer. I always like to wrap them up in parchment paper and then put them in an airtight container or a Ziploc baggie for it. We've got our potato pancakes flipped over, frying through on the other side on here. And then I'm just gonna shape up a couple more so that they're ready to go in. But we're gonna be done. We'll be able to serve up here in a little bit. Again, with your potato pancakes, squeeze out this extra liquid, especially since no egg is in here. So the only binder is just the natural potato starch. Pat them fairly thin because you want them to crisp up, and the thinner they are, the more crispy deliciousness you're going to get.
Did you add any flour to the potatoes?
No flour, just onion powder. Onion powder works as a really great binder for these that holds them together and gives them great flavor. So that's one of those things about onion flour that or onion powder that I love. It gives you the option to go gluten-free if you need to, without really changing the texture or the flavor. Okay, let me wash my hands real quick. Get our next.
And what's the brand of the waffle maker?
This is the KitchenAid Pro line, but as I said earlier, this model has been discontinued. While it may look shiny and new, it's like 20 years old. And so they have discontinued it, but they have another model KitchenAid makes, and Breville makes ones that are fairly similar, but not quite the exact same. And look at our beautiful pop, pop. Gorgeous. So we've got our mountain of waffles here, ready to feed, an army.
And what's the best way to clean it?
The best way with this thing is once it cools down, you are going to wipe it down. This is a cast iron inside, so you don't scrub it with soap. The outside, yes, you can clean off, but the inside, just wipe it down with, water and a paper towel, and really make sure it's dry because you don't, again, want it to rust or anything like that. But super, super easy to clean up. And that's kind of the nice thing about it is it's got a nonstick surface essentially, so nothing really sticks to it. So the cleanup is much easier. Okay, I think we're ready to get our first batch out. We're going to put them on a paper towel. That way it can soak up the extra grease and it allows it to stay nice and crispy. You can also do it on like a cookie cooling rack if you wanted to. And then I'm going to pop my second batch in. Now these are ones that you don't want to do them in a deep fryer because they will fall apart. You need that base of the pan to hold them together, but in the oil like this is perfect, and then just crisp them up on both sides. I'm going to shape up these two, and then I think we will be ready to serve up here. Again, when you shape them, you see how much extra liquid that comes out? Squeeze that out. That helps your potatoes hold together, and it's going to allow them to be more crispy on here. So I'm going to squeeze, and I'm going to show you. Just squeeze it out between your hands. And do I have enough? I have enough to make one little small one afterwards. So we use 3 potatoes. Each potato gives you about 3 mini hash browns, although these are filling hash browns, and they are delicious. Just don't skimp on the seasoning because the seasoning is golden. Okay, we've got those frying up, but since we have enough to plate up for our first round, let's plate up our breakfast here. Let me grab, and I think I'm going to do it on 2 plates.
Okay, can you go over the seasoning for the
Yes.
potatoes?
So very, very simple. We used about a tablespoon of onion powder, about a teaspoon and a half of garlic salt, and then about a half a teaspoon of black pepper in there. And that is it with the shredded potato, green onions, and red peppers. Gives you that kind of pops of red and green for Christmas. Plus they add great flavor. Okay, let's clean up over here. Just a smidge. Bring my stack of waffles over here. It's like what you see when you get served in like a movie. And so let's grab, we'll do 2 plates because we'll have ones for the sweets and ones for. So for your waffle, you're going to place it on there. You've still got these, you can hear nice crispy edge on them. And of course, with your waffles, you need to serve it with a nice dollop of butter in there where you kind of coat it all the way around on like, as like my kids say, you need to fill up every little crevasse in there. And then we'll drizzle it with our maple syrup. Of course, it doesn't want to open up for me, but there we go. So a nice maple syrup. Now, I'm not going to be as crazy as my kids. My kids are like every single hole needs to be filled with maple syrup. We've got our crispy hash browns made with our green onions, red peppers, and onion powder and garlic salt. And then, of course, just pop it out. Our frittata. slide this guy right out of here. So we have our egg, sausage, green onion, and red pepper frittata with cheddar cheese in there. So it's just nice, homey, delicious thing that will serve all together for a delicious Sunday waffle brunch. And again, our waffles are sourdough, so they are gut healthy. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day and show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to our page and search for what we made. So we've got our sourdough waffles, our frittata, and our homemade hash browns. And you can always watch and cook along with me again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets in it. I've got my Wusthof knives, my hex-clad pans, all my bakeware, all the different things I use in the kitchen I have in there for you guys to check out. But again, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe.